All right. We're hot.
Yes.
Toyota's
Yes, we are.
hot, hot, hot. Remember them commercials?
I don't know if I got that one up here.
No, it was a radio commercial. It
that's
wasn't
what it
really a TV commercial. It was more of a radio commercial. But yeah,
Remember when the radio had commercials for
wow.
like products
Well,
and things?
they do sometimes, but it's usually local.
It's really weird when you hear them because you're like, what am I listening to? Sometimes they'll have like commercials for like television shows on local cable or whatnot,
Yeah.
local cable affiliates, and it sounds very weird because you're just not used to it anymore.
No.
But what we are used to is podcasting now, and this is the podcast of Cinema Discovery Project with myself, Andrew Cabral, and my co-host Stephen Billings.
Hey, hi.
And we are back here 2 weeks after our last episode, which was a spotlight on The King of Comedy, a Martin Scorsese film. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about Martin Scorsese, most definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're also going to be talking about Joker, because we promised we would give a kind of review or a discussion about that movie, because we had not seen it yet.
Yeah.
During our last episode, we talked about it heavily, so now we're kind of getting a before and after effect on that movie. But before we get into all of those things, there is one, we don't like to really get into this anymore. We used to do it a lot. It was kind of a running joke between Stephen and I.
It seemed like maybe earlier this year, a lot of people were dying on us, and it seemed like we were doing it too much, I felt like. So I kind of told Andrew, I was like, look, can we just back off a little bit on the death at the beginning of every show? But this one seemed, to be, we can't go without mentioning this person. So
right.
We have just the other day. Was it Monday? Did it happen?
When did it happened October 11th,
okay, yeah.
Which was sometime last week, because today is the 15th, so 4 days ago. So last week, and it was the death of Robert Forster,
yes,
who we had recently mentioned when we did our Quentin Tarantino episode, and how his career was revived because of him being in Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown. And that's where a lot of people know him from.
Yeah, that's what I was introduced to him from. Yeah.
Same thing here, because he was never a leading man. He was always kind of a character actor, and he wasn't really, a headliner in any big films or anything like that. And Quentin Tarantino is kind of known for bringing these actors out of obscurity, or bringing kind of his favorite actors out of obscurity. The same thing with Pam Grier and Jackie Brown as well. He remembered her from the black exploitation films that he watched in the 70s, and he brought her career back as well. So Robert Forster, though, has been a really consistent career working actor throughout all of his career.
Yeah.
He has a total of 186 credits on IMDb, and they range widely. He didn't care as long as he worked. That seems to be the gist for me. Where he worked in television, he worked in movies, he worked in TV movies. He really didn't care. A lot of people probably remember him for Jackie Brown, but he was also in The Descendants, the Alexander Payne film. He was also in Mulholland Drive. He was also in, most recently, a lot of people are going to remember him for being in Breaking Bad, the television series. He was in a couple of episodes towards the end of Breaking Bad. I don't want to spoil Breaking Bad for anybody who hasn't seen it, but he also reprised his role in the Breaking Bad movie that just dropped on Netflix very recently, called El Camino. El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. And he reprises his role in that, and he's great in it. And that's probably one of his last roles he's ever going to have. There's one credit here that says, quote unquote, filming Amazing Stories, and where he has a role in it. And I don't know if he completed work on that, or however long he, if he ever got to be in it at all.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, right now, El Camino may be his last thing. And he was also in the television series Last Man Standing recently. He was in the Twin Peaks revival.
Yeah, he was. Doesn't he play
ago.
Tim Allen's dad in Last Man Standing? I think
he did.
Yeah.
Yes. I wonder if they're going to address that in that series at all, because I know that series is still
running.
On.
Still running. Yeah.
Well, it was, that series went on and then got canceled and then got revived on another network.
Yeah.
I think it moved from ABC to Fox or something like that.
Sounds about right.
But yeah, Robert Forster was also in Oh man, a lot of movies that people probably aren't like aware of. Things like I don't know, like um American Yakuza and things like South Beach and 29th Street. I remember I saw him in a movie called Avalanche where he stars alongside Rock Hudson and Mia Farrow, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I know of this movie is because Mystery Science Theater 3000, the revival from recent times, they watched that as one of their episodes, and he was in it as he was like a nature photographer that was trying to like warn people that there's going to be there was a heavy chance of an avalanche that's gonna come, and of course it does. It's a disaster movie from the 70s.
Yeah.
It's essentially what it is. All those disaster movies from back then, like the Towering Inferno and the Poseidon Adventure, all of those things. That was kind of one of it, tried to play off of that craze at the time. It's not a great movie, as you can say. It's kind of a B movie. It's interesting. It's kind of a B movie with an A cast because Rock Hudson, big name, Mia Farrow, big name, Robert Forster, not so much. Though he was in another movie called Alligator, which is kind of like a B movie monster movie, but.
Yeah,
he had an eclectic career, but you have to like seek out his stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't seen a lot of this. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, but when I did see him, he was always, he always has kind of like a stoicness to him, but also like a collectiveness, like a cool collectiveness to him. That kind of it's one of them things. He has a vibe,
Right.
that is, a charisma that is there that only certain people have, man. I mean, and
yeah, his performances, from what I've seen, were very smooth.
Yeah,
he was always a very smooth customer on screen, if that's a phrase people still use nowadays. But from the outpouring of love that he got from the Hollywood community, apparently he was a really, really nice person to work with. A lot of the people that he had worked with in the past, or a lot of people that had met him, had glowing things to say about him.
Yeah.
So that was very nice. But it was also very sad because I would have liked to have seen him be in more things. You never want to see somebody's career, end. And he died at 78. 78 may sound like an old number, but in modern context, not so much.
Not really. It's and it was, I think it was brain cancer that I saw.
Is that what it was? I didn't find out the reason.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was brain cancer. So it's one of them things. It's like, it's nothing you can do, man. I mean, it's.
Yeah, it just happens to go that way sometimes. But moving on from Robert Forster, you want to talk about the Joker?
Yeah, let's get into this dark, this very dark movie.
Yeah, we're going from death to like pitch black bleakness. We're going from dark to potentially darker.
Yeah,
nothing's really darker than death.
Do we want to get into spoilers, or do you want to?
I'm just going to ask you that. Do you want to talk about spoilers or no?
I would say start off talking a little bit, be more vague, give our opinions, and then maybe we'll get into a little bit of spoilers. We'll say before we start talking about it. But I don't want to get into some heavy discussion. I think this is something that's going to be talked about for a while. I don't want to. I would like to see the movie maybe a couple more times before I get into a heavy discussion about the movie.
Did come out. Yeah, it came out only a week ago and a couple of days, so we are not too far removed from it, and the discussions still continue onward and onward. It's definitely a movie I think you want to see more than once if you liked it, or if you are unsure about it. If you flat out hated it, I wouldn't say don't see it again. Don't waste your time, because if you flat out hated it, chances are you may not like it ever. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's that kind of divisive of a movie, and the divisiveness of it when it comes to kind of the discussion is something we hinted at before. There was a lot of pre-talk about this movie of it's going to incite violence. It's going to have people with mental illnesses latch onto this character and make him their hero. So they're going to do bad things or things like that. It was all kind of a negative hype around it in that regard. So far, nothing like that has happened.
That I've heard of. Yeah.
That I've heard of. I mean, I heard some things here and there where they precautionary things where they had to evacuate some theaters because they thought someone might do something. Or there was one story I heard where someone walked into the theater, walked up to the front and kind of like surveyed the theater, like looked like he was like surveying the area. So people freaked out and the place was evacuated, the police were called, and
Yeah.
lo and behold, it ended up being nothing. You know what I mean? There were things like that. And there's also things where they had undercover police officers or undercover FBI agents or something like that were hiding out, kind of like scoping out and like, you know, to make sure nothing happened.
Yeah.
So things were heightened security-wise and heightened anxiety-wise going into this movie.
I can tell you, no matter what the scrutiny was, it did not stop the people from going to go see it because the box office was good on this movie.
Yeah, the box office was very good.
It was what, 95 million on its opening weekend?
Yeah, 95, 96 million opening weekend. Second weekend, it was like 55.
So it wasn't even a 50% drop.
It wasn't even like that big of a drop off. So and I think worldwide right now, this movie's sitting at, I want to say 500 and something million. It's sitting at like $500 million right now.
That's right.
Because it's playing very well. And it goes to show you that the R rating is not deterring people. It goes to show you that the negative, anxiousness around it is not.
Well, if anything, that stuff helped it.
It maybe did help. But yeah, right now it's sitting at $556 million. Check it, boxofficemojo.com. And that's only 2 weeks. That's only the 2 weeks that it's been in theaters.
You think it's going to break $1 billion?
I don't know, not even 2 weeks yet. It's been 2 weekends. Do you think it's going to break $1 billion? That's tough. I think it'll hit like Deadpool numbers, which was what's like 7.
I'm thinking 750 to 800 million, maybe.
Yeah, that's like Deadpool numbers.
Yeah.
It'll probably hit. I mean, Suicide Squad did like 700 and something worldwide, and that wasn't even. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that the movie didn't feature, but it was going to potentially have the Joker in it.
Yeah.
And he was only in the movie for 12 minutes.
Well, the one thing that does help the movie though is that this time of the year there's not a lot of competition.
No, in October right now you're getting a lot of. I mean, It Chapter 2 came out a month ago, so that's not really affecting it. Addams Family, which came out this week, that's a kids movie, different audience. Gemini Man, not a lot of marketing. I mean, Will Smith is a big name.
Maleficent's coming out, but
Maleficent's coming out.
That's a different crowd.
Yet again, different audience.
Yeah.
That's I mean, not to say that the same people who see Maleficent won't have also seen Joker, but we're saying like in terms of the bulk of the people who are seeing that movie and Joker are completely different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Disney versus, a rated R, like hard R comic book movie are completely different audiences for the most part. But all of those fears kind of didn't lead to much. It led to a lot of more discourse on the internet, but it also after seeing the movie, that fear and that anxiousness and just that type of feeling was really not warranted for the type of movie we saw.
Yeah, I feel like there was a little
like that, Steven.
I feel like that there were certain journalists that really, I don't know that if it was intentional or not, but some of them really overdid it on trying to almost deter people from seeing this movie. Like it was.
Yeah, I mean, let me put it to you this way: when it comes to violence, or when it comes to just violence, in terms of like, oh my goodness, the violence is too much. It's not as. It's
not
bad
nearly
as
as violent as some other movies I've seen.
No, not even close. And so I don't know where people were getting like oh, it's too obscene in that regard, because it's really not. And honestly, that all depends on like what your tolerance is for violence. There is blood, there's gruesome murder. You know what I mean? When it comes to like, murder in itself isn't a clean act.
Sure,
you know
but dude, like you were just saying, Deadpool kills the shit out of people in the movies.
I'll say this: Deadpool is more violent from an aesthetic standpoint than Joker is. I mean, at one point, for those of you who haven't seen Deadpool, I guess spoilers. Like he cuts somebody in half, like shish kebabs.
Well, dude, that
holds him up, and just cuts him in half.
That mixed with the foul language and sexual humor.
Oh yeah,
is way more rated R of a movie than Joker.
It's way more graphic than Joker is. Where the Joker is dark and disturbing and very bleak is that is that that's the vibe and the tone throughout the entire movie.
Sure.
And I feel like it just gets progressively darker as you go along with the story,
Yeah.
following Arthur
Fleck.
Fleck.
Yeah.
Arthur Fleck, portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix. It just gets darker and darker as you see his mind degrade. Of course, his situation degrade to go down and down and down.
And of course, the movie has a more relatable story. It's more realistic. So
it's a social commentary, but it hits really close to home when it comes to reality.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not the same type of movie as Deadpool in the sense of, being able to relate to reality, but it's definitely, I mean, I've seen so many, I mean, the movie I saw, The Devil, is one of the most gruesome movies I've ever seen. And
I mean, we watched Old Boy.
Old Boy, yeah.
Which we did a spotlight on, is more graphic than this.
Yeah.
Where the thing with the Joker is that it's an iconic character.
It's based around an iconic character.
It's widespread.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, although this is going to be considered a quote-unquote comic book movie, it's really unlike any other comic book movie you've ever seen.
It really sits there with The Dark Knight as a comic book movie that can stand on its own as just a great movie.
Yeah, I would even say it does. It pushes the boundary of what a comic book movie is.
Oh yeah,
past The Dark Knight, past Logan, past anything anyone's ever done, and it's really just using the comic book character of Joker to create a very dark drama, psychological drama about it's about mental illness to a certain extent, but it's also about social commentary on classism and income inequality and the degradation of society because of certain circumstances and certain reasons. It's so much more than saying, oh, this movie just shows people with mental illnesses are violent. You know what I mean? That's way too simple of a statement of this movie. That there's so much more nuance than that. There's so much more context than that.
And there's also the movie's talking about, not only about the broad strokes, but also the small strokes of not just mental illness, but how we treat people in general. Like you don't know what small act could really put somebody over the edge. I mean, and that's maybe one of the things that's really worrying people about people seeing this movie is that. But the thing is it's not in a negative way. You should take positive that it's being conscious of that thing.
Yeah, I don't think the movie, the way people are reading this, like I was just saying, where they're making certain conjectures based off of the way this movie's portraying mental illness. I don't think the movie's intentionally trying to do those
They're not
things.
fetishizing that aspect of the movie. Like this is cool. Joker's so cool. It's like no, you should be taking a lesson from this.
Yeah, there was this whole idea like this movie's like is going to look like incel revenge, an incel revenge movie. Incels, for those of you who don't know, are, I think, as a group of just kind of hateful people on the internet who are they're called incels because they're involuntarily celibate. So they kind of
I heard about that.
They hate the world. They hate people. They hate women. They hate there's a lot of hate in there. And in this movie, people were concerned that the Joker would be a hero for them, but to me, watching this movie, it's more of a warning and kind of a, I would say a warning, but like almost like a critique of them, like saying like, this is not right. There's nothing about the Joker in this movie where I'm like, oh yeah, what a great person, what a good guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
there's never
someone to look up to.
There's never a point where I necessarily like him. Now, of course. No. There is, I would say that they do want you to somewhat empathize with him. They want you to understand him to an extent.
I would say understand him versus like sympathize or even empathize, because I can't really feel what he's feeling.
Well, the thing is you can't feel what he's feeling, but I think there obviously becomes a point in the movie where he crosses like the line.
Yeah, there comes a point in the movie where that kind of goes
away. It goes away, yeah. I mean, but I think through the first maybe 30 to 45 minutes of the movie, you see who you see and you empathize with him. But then when he chooses to make a choice, to do something that's bad, then it leaves.
When you get
that's when it starts. That's when it starts to turn into a cautionary tale.
Yeah, I would say the first act you're kind of on the nose with that, but as the film goes along and as certain things are revealed about his character and his tendencies, you know pretty much right from the beginning, but it's even more revealed as the film goes on that there's something wrong with him, and you get certain reasons why he is the way he is, why his situation is the way it is, and it's a really good movie in terms of, I think, storytelling and like holding things to the chest and giving a slow reveal as opposed to just kind of like spoon feeding everything to us.
Not exposition dumps and stuff.
Yeah, there's no real exhibition dumps. And I'll say this film is extremely narrow in its focus.
Yeah.
It's really only focusing on Arthur Fleck and him and just a character study.
I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is basically in every scene. I mean, it's
Joaquin Phoenix is. Yeah, he is in every scene, I want to say.
I would assume he's in almost every shot.
Yeah, and he is unbelievably mesmerizing in this movie. His acting is something that I've hardly ever seen before. It's beyond acting a character. He becomes this character. Every single movement he makes, every single twitch he does, that laugh... When you learn why that laugh is the way it is and how frequently it comes up in the movie, that laugh in and of itself is a character trait.
Yeah.
And it's different than any other Joker laughs that you've ever heard before. Because it's not just something he does voluntarily, it's involuntary. And man, it's creepy at times and unsettling. This whole movie is really unsettling.
It is.
And it's irksome. Like it just kind of like it kind of grabs you right from the beginning and just like never lets you go for the 2-hour runtime. And Joaquin Phoenix, apparently he lost a lot of weight for this role because there's often times where he's not wearing a shirt or he's not wearing a lot of clothes and he looks like a skeleton.
Yeah,
he's not quite Christian Bale in The Machinist, but he's pretty close.
He's getting there.
He's unhealthy looking.
Yeah, there's a particular scene I want to talk about when we start talking spoilers, but it's kind of a funny correlation I made in the movie. But I mean, I agree, man. I mean, Phoenix, I've always loved Phoenix. He's always been kind of maybe my top 5 current actors. He's always good. But in this film, he definitely takes it up a level, and it's interesting to see him play in a mainstream film because he's never really dipped his toe in mainstream, really.
What's shocking about that, you saying that, not even shocking, what's interesting is that we say it's a mainstream film, but this movie's production budget, I think, was only $55 million, which is well below what a mainstream film, I guess, budgetarily is considered to be mainstream.
Typically, yeah.
But it's more of a mid-level
at least in this genre, because I mean, there's mainstream movies like the whatchamacallit, the horror movies company.
Oh, the
Blumhouse is all $2 million movies, but they are they're mainstream as it gets nowadays. So
yeah, when it comes to horror, I guess.
Yeah.
But when it comes, it's an indie art house film within the comic book hero subgenre, and that's something we've never quite seen before.
I mean, I think Logan gets close.
Logan gets close, but the difference between Logan and Joker for me is there's that second act drop in Logan.
Sure.
Where, I mean, there's certain plot thing that happens where the plot kind of stops, and I'm
because his character
is really necessary.
His character is more fantasy, of course. So it's harder to feel make it feel more like it's real and artsy. But
there's no height in fantasy in Joker.
No.
Like Gotham looks like New York City circa 1981.
And I will say, if there was this might be my favorite representation of Gotham that I've seen.
I'll be honest, it's pretty accurate to kind of just like the dirtiness of Gotham.
It just felt more real. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just because we were in the point of view was so from the people more than it was from an outside perspective.
Yeah, there's no like I say, there's no heightened reality. For example, in Tim Burton's Batman films, like Gotham looks like a fictional place.
Yeah.
Like it looks like a metropolis, but they've got like, old time cars and all that kind of stuff.
It's like a steampunky, like it's like in the future, but it's also in the past.
Yeah, and Nolan's Gotham, which was, I think he used Chicago for the first two films and then Pittsburgh for Dark Knight Rises, looks like a modern like city.
Yeah.
Whereas this version of Gotham looks like it looks like an old time version of Gotham, but you get that street level.
The movie's set in the 80s.
The
movie's set in 81, I think.
I think 81. Yeah, and there's and you get certain hints about like what's going on within Gotham, where like there's definitely, like I said, classism that's happening, and you get the feeling that like there's a few at the top, and then everybody else is just like wallowing in the bottom.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Well, I guess,
and it's really interesting how that plays out as a theme in the movie.
Yeah, and I guess if you want to, we can start talking spoilers a little bit.
Yeah, start talking spoilers.
So okay, from this point on, we're gonna start talking spoilers. So if you have not seen the Joker, please leave and come back maybe in about 10 minutes, maybe. So, but here, spoilers. Here we go. So, yes, the classism stuff. One of the things I really loved about the perspective is that it makes Thomas Wayne out to be kind of smarmy.
Oh yeah, he's a jackass.
He's a douche. But the thing is, it only seems that way from the point of view that we're seeing.
True.
And I think that's what's interesting because, obviously this isn't some kind of straight adaptation of anything. They're doing their own thing here. But the thing that what we know about Thomas Wayne is from what we the source material is. We assume he's a good dude at heart. But that anybody we know that's good, somebody could think that they're bad from a certain point of view.
Right.
And for of course the people that are poor or middle class that look up at somebody like him are going to think he's bad already.
Oh yeah, because there's jealousy.
They think he thinks that he's better than us, and
from what we know from many incarnations of the Batman story, origin stories, that Martha and Thomas Wayne were philanthropists.
Yeah,
where they gave a lot back to the city of Gotham, which we do get a lot here in the movie. In Joker, they hint at that as well, but there's definitely a hint of classism. There's one particular scene where the people are protesting, and Arthur goes into this movie theater, and they're all there watching Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah,
and it's just like bunch of just like the rich aristocratic like people of Gotham sitting in there, and the people outside are just like the ones like just protesting. Well,
what I thought,
you just see that different they're watching classic art house cinema, and people outside are like not.
Well,
so there's that distance there.
Well, what was interesting to me about that scene, and maybe I'm wrong about this. I thought I read this somewhere, but that what's funny about that is that Charlie Chaplin, I think at some point had said something that he made movies for people like him, people that the non-rich people, from when he was poor. So he liked to make movies for them kind of people, and that's what's funny about the scene is that the rich are watching his movies now. Like
that is very fascinating.
It's an interesting correlation.
We talked about Charlie Chaplin in great lengths before, but his character of the tramp is literally a homeless person who's just trying to live and survive with an optimistic outlook on life. That's pretty much what his character of the tramp is. And these people are watching it with their suits on and their gold watches or whatever.
The poor
their beautiful art house theater.
Like the poor people are like the jesters. They're just laughing at the poor people.
Yeah, to a certain extent. And that's the scene that also where Arthur Fleck confronts Thomas Wayne in the restroom of all uncomfortable places.
And I guess this leads to the big twist of the movie that's different. We can talk about that.
Yeah, there were I think this is what you're going to talk about. Perhaps we're on the same wavelength. Is that there was a rumor even before this movie ever was in production. Well, during production, is that the joke that Arthur Fleck would be like the bastard son of Thomas Wayne.
Yeah,
and they play on that in this movie. The thing is, that's not the case.
Yeah,
what we learn is that Arthur Fleck's mother used to work for Thomas Wayne and pretty much had an infatuation with him.
Yeah.
And she also adopted Arthur while she was working for the Waynes, and So in her mind, she also has a psychosis as well.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows that mental illness is somewhat hereditary in a lot of cases. And it's definitely in this case. And
well, it's not hereditary. He's adopted.
What's crazy, you're right, it's not hereditary, but for parts of the movie, we thought it was hereditary.
Yeah.
But in real life, it can be hereditary. You know what I mean? It's very weird because this movie is very twisty, like you're saying.
Well, it shows you that you know, sometimes when you're raised a certain way, it can obviously have an effect on you.
So, you know what, that makes more sense than what I was going for. It makes a lot more sense where it's kind of, you know, but we'll get to that. But right now, let me go back to what I was saying, because I have something to say on top of that, where she believed that Arthur Fleck was the bastard son of, you know, Thomas Wayne, and that turns out to not be true. He finds that out in the movie, like that's like a revelation to him, and he's very upset about it, and he feels betrayed. But what we learn is that the mother does have a history of psychosis, and what we also learn is that he was traumatized heavily as a child.
Yeah.
And that is what has led to
even before he was with the mother.
Yeah.
He was
abused physically and of course emotionally, mentally. And we learn about that in the movie, and it shows there's a lot of things you can read into that, what it's trying to say. And what I got out of it is that, like, the traumas of our past can affect our present. We see that happen a lot in not only the fictionalized world of movies, but we see that happen a lot in life, where you know, our present behaviors are dictated because of things that we were exposed to in the past. A lot of people become self-aware of the negative things that they were exposed to in the past, and they're aware of them so they can overcome them, or they can change their lives and move past them. But a lot of people get stuck in that. And I'm saying that specifically when it comes to a lot more behavioral things, like for example, you know, racism and things like that are things that are taught to children at a very young age, and they grew up thinking that that's normal, when in fact it's not normal. You know what I mean? That's a learned thing that you can unlearn if you're aware of how negative it is. But when it comes to the trauma in Arthur Fleck's life, he's not even aware of it. He's looking over like old newspaper clippings, and he doesn't remember any of it because it's probably so far like suppressed in his psyche that while it's still having an effect on him, he's not even aware of it. So this movie is moving in a lot of different levels.
Well, also, you know, it's hard to even trust what he sees, because we also know that he has a lot of fantasies.
Oh yeah, another twist. He has Rupert Pupkin-esque delusions that we as audience members aren't aware of until he becomes aware of them.
Yeah.
It's like a mystery wrapped in an enigma in this movie, and that leads me to one of the negative things I had while watching the movie. I'm watching it and I'm like, man, Zazie Beetz' character, she's like reduced down to absolutely nothing. Like she's just a plot. She's like a bare bones plot device. Like, what is going on? There's no you know, building blocks to their relationship. There's no nothing. Turns out, you know, we're in spoiler territory here. He's imagining their relationship as being something when it in fact doesn't exist. She doesn't even know who he is, other than like I think she knows that he's her
they've come across each other in the elevator.
In like the elevator, that's it. But we're led to believe that they have like this relationship, and I was wondering why like there was no writing for this relationship at all. And lo and behold, there's the reason. Granted, I still would have liked more Zazie Beetz in the movie.
Sure.
She's not used a lot. Like I said, the film focuses pretty much entirely on Arthur Fleck as the Joker. Robert De Niro is also in the movie very briefly. He plays a talk show host that we saw in the trailer, and man, the talk show scene at the end of this movie is unnervingly crazy. You know what I mean? Like, because you know something.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming, but I was like, I can't wait. It was unnerving, but yet kind of satisfying to see.
Right.
To it, I guess in a sadistic way, but I just knew it was coming, and it was the way it plays out is crazy. Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
And then the final end would just like just chaos in the streets of Gotham like there always is, and he's just dancing on top of a car because he's their hero. What's mind-boggling about this movie is that in kind of like the Joker has always been showy. He's always been, a glory hound or whatever. In this movie, Arthur Fleck's not really like that, even when like he starts becoming popular, even though people don't even know it's him. There's the way the movie sets up that whole people are just looking for an icon to latch onto, looking for something to latch onto, even if it's somebody who commits like horrific acts like murder, they still see them as a hero because of the people that they kill they don't like. It's so interesting when it's coming from a social perspective of like, who are our heroes? Who do we look up to?
Yeah.
Who do we gravitate towards, even though they're not good people? Also, one of my favorite parts of the movie is it's a scene that's been released online. It's the one where he's dancing in the public bathroom. And this happens at a pivotal point in the movie where this is the moment of no return. This is the moment where I think the psychological break happens.
Yeah.
Where it's just the floodgates have opened and he's now becoming something more than what he was before. And the scene and the music is just mesmerizing. And the way Todd Phillips shot it was perfect. The music and the music throughout this movie is perfect. Yeah. Absolutely perfect. And I cannot pronounce the name of the composer to save my life, but I'm going to try it here because I think this person needs to be recognized. Let's see. Oh boy,
I can't wait to hear.
Okay, it is a woman. Her name is Hildur Guanajuato.
Wow,
something like that. Guanajuato.
That sounds rough.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I got the first name down though because she her last name has certain markers above the O's, and I never know how to say those. Yeah.
Well, that person she did a fantastic job.
Yeah, she's also the same composer of Sicario, Day of the Soldado. She also worked in the music department for Sicario. She worked in the music department for The Revenant. She worked in the music department for Arrival. So when you're thinking of like the score for this movie, think of those movies, and because they're very similarly, just the way the orchestral sound is, the tone is, and the kind of the way it influences the movie and how it meshes so well with the scenes. Think of those movies. It's amazing score.
But we're forgetting almost the MVP somewhat, other than Phoenix is got to be Todd Phillips, man. I mean, the direction, man.
I would say, despite of some of the asinine things he said during the doing the not the marketing, but doing the
press tour.
Press tour. I was gonna say public tour, but that doesn't sound right. Press tour, where he was saying like, "Oh, you can't make comedies now in this woke society, so that's why I had to switch to dramas and all that nonsense." And I'm like,
I think don't. Let me look. I think he's being.
Isn't that what he said? Something like that.
He did say that. He did say he paraphrasing. You basically said that. I think he was being more of a probably sarcastic. Maybe
probably. I didn't watch the interview.
I'm just saying. The way I read it is he's probably. I mean, he probably means what he says, but the way he said it, I think, was being more less angry and more like trying to be funny. Because
that makes sense.
I just don't. I don't think he's wrong to an extent. I mean, it's hard to try to make funny movies more than it. I mean, comedians are having hard enough time. Trying to.
I'll say this: comedies are probably some of the toughest movies to make because comedy is such a wide open.
Well, it's so subjective.
Thing. Yeah, it's a wide open subjective material.
And with how sensitive people are today, it's almost anything could upset somebody.
True. You can make comedies without being hurtful to people.
But the thing is if you're trying to push the boundaries,
right?
Just like with dramas, just like with the Joker, if you're trying to push the boundaries, which I think comedy is even harder to push the boundaries in, you feel like you're stuck.
Drama is easier because people expect a drama to be dramatic.
There's a certain there's a
no
certain
limit
amount
to
of
drama.
acceptance,
you know what I mean?
when it comes to like tough subject matters with the drama.
Granted,
But with comedy, you're expecting
dramas,
lightness, and when you hit on something that's tough in the comedy, they're like, "What are you throwing this in my? I'm supposed to be laughing right now." Like, ugh.
Yeah, in drama though, like people do get upset with certain materials and things like that. Of course, I mean that happens, but I think drama has a little more leeway when it comes to things like that. And just for in terms of pushing the envelope, Joker gave no Fs at all when it came to pushing the envelope.
No.
None at all. I want to say something. I actually, I haven't seen this since I saw, a Mother, the film by what's his name that I can't remember. Aronofsky. I was gonna say something else, but no, that's not Aronofsky. I hadn't seen a walkout in a theater since Mother. But I saw one for the Joker. For Joker.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I have no idea why. But for Mother, I understood, because Mother, I was walking into the theater, towards the screening room to see Mother, and there was some young people in front of me, like that group of 3 young people, and I'm like, they're like young. I don't know if they were late teens, early 20s, but I'm like, this is not going to be a movie.
I hope they don't think this is a Hunger Games prequel.
I don't. Maybe they just saw Jennifer Lawrence, so they were like, I want to see this movie. Or something like that, but I didn't think it was going to be a movie for them. I don't like to judge people, but I didn't think it was going to be a movie for them. And of course, they left halfway through the movie. But for Joker, a couple walked out right before the third act, right before he was about to go on the talk show with Robert De Niro. They left. They left actually the scene where his 2 people who were remember
his
two
guys he worked with. 2 people they worked with, yeah.
Yeah, ex-employee, not even friends, just people he worked with. They went to visit him at his apartment, and because his mother had just, spoiler alert, passed on. Still in the spoiler realm, I guess. Well, yeah. We'll see.
We're spoiling the movie. I mean, we're talking spoilers.
I guess so. Damn. Yeah. The movie does get really dark like that, and he kills one of them pretty viciously, where he grabs the guy's head and just bashing it up against like the door frame or something, and the people walked out right as that was happening. So I was like, I guess they couldn't handle it.
They took it too far.
Even that scene wasn't like that gruesome, but there's an aggressivism that Joaquin goes to in this movie that is very visceral and very cerebral. And maybe they just couldn't handle it. But I hadn't seen a walkout in such a long time.
Well, poor them. I'm sorry. I hate when people just can't handle it. Well, they already paid the money.
That's true. I don't know if they asked for. I don't know if they asked for.
I think there's a certain point where you can't get a refund.
I'm assuming like get 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah, you're not getting a refund in this case. That.
The thing is, like, they missed like the finale, like the best part, like the culmination of this movie of the iconic
guess they don't really care,
getting
man.
his due. Guess they didn't care. But there's a lot of people who straight up just don't like the movie, like we've said. Don't like the way it treats the movie. I have a friend who didn't like the first half, but liked the second half when he became, when he became more Joker-esque. And there are people who are kind of viewing this movie not liking it because of they're viewing it as like, oh, the Joker would never do this, or they're viewing it as an adaptation of like the Joker character from the comics. And I tend to not do that with these movies because the mediums are just too damn different.
Well, I was gonna say, like, obviously the one thing about the Joker and one thing about this particular movie giving Joker an origin story was controversial with comic book fans because people like the fact that Joker's origins are, unknown, basically.
Well, we've had them in the past.
We've had different versions, yeah.
Yeah, the traditional one is that he fell in a vat of like chemicals, and that's why his skin is all bleached and all messed up, and that's why part of the reason why he went crazy. We got a little bit of that in 1989's Tim Burton's Batman, and that's been like the origin for the character in the comics for pretty much ever. Then the one we got that's a lot closer to the movie Joker is the one in The Killing Joke, where he was kind of he was a failed comedian who just had one or too many bad days, and just too many bad things happened to him, and he finally psychologically broke. That's where we get him in the Red Hood gang and things like that. But like you were saying, Steven, people like the fact that he didn't have an origin, and that plays on the Heath Ledger Joker from The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I think Heath Ledger's Joker has plays into that more. Yeah, he gives you these stories about things that happened to him, but you're not really sure if they're true or not.
Yeah, because like he says like when I was a kid, this happened. When I was an adult, this happened, and you don't know if they're true at all because they're all about like how he got his scars,
or they're all true.
I mean, there's so many theories about the origin of Heath Ledger's Joker. The one that I not gravitate toward, the one that I find the most interesting is that he's actually a war vet who has PTSD. Because I think he's more of a domestic terrorist than he is like a supervillain in Dark Knight. Just stirring up chaos. He's literally like, chaos personified.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker kind of stumbles into becoming the Joker.
Which I was going to say, some people have heard complaints about, they don't like the fact that we're explaining why Joker is becoming what he is, because they like the idea of just somebody that is bad for being bad, which I understand, because I do like villains that, and I've said this about the Joker. I love the Joker because I feel like he's a character that is bad. It's just, as they say in The Dark Knight, some people just want to watch the world burn,
Right.
And I like that, because we're getting into this thing where we're over explaining certain characters, like Maleficent, where the bad, no, she's not that bad. She has tragedy. And she was good at one point, and now she's
right.
Yeah, I hate that. I like the villains to be villains.
I appreciate giving more nuance to a villain's origin, because
I agree.
Just having them be bad just for the sake of being bad seems like lazy writing at this point.
It is,
because like that's literally how a lot of these big superhero action movies write their villains, where they're just villains because they're villains. You know what I mean? They're just bad because they're bad. There's no real motivation for them. I want to see some motivation for them. I mean, if that's or if there is no motivation, do what they did in The Dark Knight. There's no motivation for them. People just want to watch the.
Well, I mean, there's a way to do it like they did in Dark Knight, where you can hint at it, but not, you don't have to give a complete origin story to everybody.
But they gave, but at least they came right out and said, he has no reason for being bad. He is bad, as opposed to just having someone act bad because they're bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It gives a little more to it. But yeah, I understand a lot of people, and I understand there are a lot of people who view the comic book hero subgenre of movies and they try to critique them as, what the quality of their adaptation is from the comic book source to the screen.
Yeah,
I've told Steven this forever. I've never done that because the mediums are too different, and I don't think it's fair to the movie to have to be too beholden to its comic book origins, because that kind of just straps down the directors, producers, actors, and all that kind of stuff. You don't give them any freedom, any range
I don't
to do anything
honestly
else.
Want them to adapt something that I could have already read. I want to be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, like if I wanted to read the Joker as I know the Joker, I'll read Batman comics. I'll read Joker comics. You know what I mean? They're there on my shelf.
And to be honest with you, when you read something, especially, books more likely, but even with comic books, you put a lot of your own ideas into something that you read.
Right.
So no matter what you read, or don't fool yourself. You're putting your own ideas into what you're visualizing and expecting. So that's what people do when they make films and they adapt. They're putting their visualizations of what they've researched into their into their movie.
Yeah, and I prefer to critique movies as movies versus movies as adaptations when it comes to their quality. I think I've said that, like I've said that a bunch of times, where I think those not that you can't have that conversation like we're kind of having now, where you can say, it gets those things right from the comics but doesn't get these things right. But I think that's a separate conversation than saying, that shot is amazing, that lighting's amazing, that acting's amazing, the camera movement's amazing, the music's amazing. Those are two very different conversations to have. And I think that we just have to keep reiterating that, because a lot of people get those two things mashed up together.
Yeah.
But someone who doesn't give a crap about any of this. And I guess this will probably close out our episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any more you want to say about Joker.
The only thing left I wanted to say about Joker,
go on,
because I hinted at it earlier, is that there's a particular scene that made me think of another movie.
Oh, yeah.
The scene where he's like in his apartment and he's dancing, one of the scenes where he has his shirt off and you see his like ribs and it's like really gross.
Yeah. He's very emaciated.
It makes me think of Silence of the Lambs for some reason, where he's dancing and he's like looking in the mirror and he's like looking at himself and he's like, kind of like just like veering at himself. I
didn't even think of that until right now, because I mean there are even moments where he's looking in a mirror applying makeup. That are disturbing. That's interesting, because like he's kind of like Silence of the Lambs is a good comparison when it comes to the irksome and kind of the dread and the dark tone that this movie has.
Yeah.
And the Joker, while I don't think the Joker's not, he's not quite Buffalo Bill, but he's also disturbed similarly.
The thing is the thing that later came along with Silence of the Lambs is the fact that that movie, some people kind of give crap to Silence of the Lambs because the movie's, portraying, especially talking about a trans person. But the thing is that the character is not actually trans. He's actually just mentally unstable. He's not, so that's the thing that's kind of comparable there too, is that it's another character with mental illness, like he's
correct.
Dealing with something.
It's another character with mental illness, doing violent things.
Yes.
But whereas Silence of the, I would say, like,
his is more psychosexual, and Joker's is more,
psychological, psychological
repression,
drama. Drama. I mean, like, it's tough comparing the two because the Joker initially doesn't set out to do violence, as opposed to Buffalo Bill, who is just abducting people and killing them. You know what I mean?
Well, sure. Like, if we got a Buffalo Bill origin story, it might be different.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah, but he's like purposely doing things, whereas opposed to the like Silence of the Lambs is a movie about catching a serial killer. You know what I mean? It's a movie about catching a serial killer, whereas the Joker is more of a character study of a person who becomes a serial killer.
Oh, yeah. It's
not even a serial killer. He just kind of falls into it. It's tough to really say. Like, the initial act of the movie of violence that sets him off is something that he does in self-defense.
Yeah.
So that's a murkier water. To somebody actively going out and
I would just compare
people.
The characters somewhat, in the sense of their psychological, profiles as being two mentally unstable people that are, had very similar scenes where they dance and look at each other and veer at each other.
What's interesting is they're kind of like on the same road, but at like different junctures or something like that.
Well, Buffalo Bill is obviously a different type of animal, but I mean, I just thought that was an interesting thing that popped in my head when I saw that scene. I was like, that kind of looks like Buffalo Bill.
Goodbye horses. But going back to that great transition that I had before, let's discuss someone who doesn't give a crap about any of these movies. Who, although I think if he saw the Joker, he probably would like it, because he was almost going to direct and or produce the Joker, and that is one Martin Scorsese, who we talked about just in our last episode, because we did a spotlight on King of Comedy, and this movie definitely takes a lot from Taxi Driver and King of Comedy.
Yeah, definitely influenced.
And definitely takes it from both of them. Because he recently came out because he's doing his press tour now for The Irishman, which is coming out very, very soon, in both limited theatrical exhibition as well as Netflix, and he came out and said that he's not really a big fan of comic book movies.
Well, he said specifically Marvel movies.
Specifically Marvel movies. So you are right. I mean, I guess that same thing could possibly apply across.
Because you got to think, I guess he might enjoy The Dark Knight.
He might enjoy Joker, like I was saying.
But he specifically said the Marvel movies. I don't watch them.
Right. I think maybe somebody asked him specifically about Marvel. And of course, this set the internet aflame, most things do. And of course, Marvel fans just lost their goddamn mind. And I'm a Marvel fan too. I like Steven and I have discussed these movies.
Sure.
I've done reviews for these movies. I read the comic books and all kind of stuff. And I just sat back and was like, oh, that's interesting. Well, let me get, because he said two things. He said two things on two separate occasions. Let's get to the first one, which happened in between our last episode and this episode. I think sometime last week or so. Let me get to the juicy quotes.
Why didn't you already have this pulled up?
Oh, I have it pulled up, but the problem is like they go for the new quote versus the old quote. Here we go. When it comes with his, let's see. Okay, I don't see. This is his first quote. I don't see them. I tried, but that's not cinema. Honestly, the closest I can think of them as well made as they are, with actors doing the best they can under the circumstances, is theme parks. It isn't the cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences by another human being. That's very interesting. That was his first thing. And just taking that, he's not entirely wrong, but I can understand why people would be upset if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, you look like somebody like him is choosing. Right. Well, first of all, he's coming from it in a perspective where he's, of course, he's somebody that's was at coming through the film industry in the 70s and the 80s. Back when films like the Marvel films were very few, far in between.
No, they basically didn't.
They didn't exist yet at this level.
Let's be honest.
But even the big budget movies were few and far between. Your Star Wars is your Indiana Jones things were not like they're not coming out every week like they are now.
Martin Scorsese, man, it's tough to just kind of quantify what he is as a person when it comes to just his level of being a cinephile, because I just don't think it's measurable. He's like cinema like personified in terms of like a human being, because he's so old school, man.
Oh yeah, he is. But the thing is, I don't think he's unreasonable. But
I don't think what he's saying is like, F Marvel movies, these MCU movies suck. He's just saying, I've seen them, I don't like them.
Yeah,
he's seen them, they're just not for me. He doesn't even say I don't like him in this quote initially.
Well, the thing is, the biggest thing I think people are focusing on is that he calls it not cinema.
Not cinema.
So now we have to define what he's saying here. So I think obviously when he says cinema, he means film that has something to say. Is what I take it as. Is he's which I guess you could say is pretentious to an extent, but he is a filmmaker that tries to make films that have something to say. And he looks at them movies as he says, theme park rides. They're just they're just eye candy. They're just things to lose a few hours in watching, which is fine, but for him that's not what he invests he likes to invest his time in.
What's fascinating to me is that for those of you who don't know, like, just the extent of Martin Scorsese's background when it comes to movies, watch the documentary, like Martin Scorsese's, I think, trip through American cinema or something like that, where he basically goes through like his entire life up until like 1994 of all of the movie genres and all of the movies that he loves and everything. He goes from westerns to musicals to all kinds of stuff, to sci-fi, to everything. And he goes into like how they personally affected him and all this kind of stuff. And you get a glimpse of like what his palette is as a cinephile. And what his palette is as a cinephile is typically high art cinema, in quotes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The stuff that Steven and I buy from the Criterion Collection, he has his hands in when it comes to getting those movies restored for them to be, distributed on Blu-ray and DVD and put into like art house theaters and second run theaters.
He's got his own curated film, sets on the Criterion Collection.
Yeah, his world cinema sets that are like just spotlighting like movies from around the world that nobody here would ever see.
Oh yeah,
if he didn't attach his name
Czech
to it.
films, African films, just a variety. He's got 2 sets out now. 2, I think they each have like maybe 5 or 6 movies on them, maybe.
Yeah, the documentary I was talking about is A Personal Journey with Martin Scorsese Through American Cinema.
Yeah,
that's what it's called. and it came out in 1995, so I was close when I said 94. But he's like set up like foundations for film restoration of old movie, like the Red Shoes and he owns the Red Shoes from the Red Shoes.
Yes,
he's come on, man. You expect this guy to like be down with like Marvel MCU movies and these big movies? He's not that type of person, and that's
I just
like, not like that's like not what I like. He said something like that, and I'm like, you know what? That makes sense that he would say something.
It
like
makes
that.
sense,
and I don't fault him for it.
I actually admire that he's he is who he is, and he could have been a lot meaner. Just put it that way, guys.
Oh yeah, he could have. I mean, there are people. There are definitely.
I'm sure in person and in personal conversations he digs a lot harder. But he knows he has a movie to sell. He has to sell right now, so he you know, I mean, he's probably already hurting himself a little bit. But the thing is the audience that's going to watch a 3.5-hour gangster movie might not be Marvel people. So
no, and this leads us to him doubling down on what he said, because this kind of leads into like. I think in terms of, and to this point where he's not even particularly attacking MCU movies or Marvel movies or these big tentpole IP movies. He's kind of attacking, I think, the cinema system in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because he's attacking what they're exhibiting.
Yeah.
Because like we all know why these movies are in the theaters, and because people go see them and they make shit tons of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like no one's going to the theater to see a 3-hour art house indie film that's going to make more than $100.
He's putting some responsibility on the theaters themselves.
Right. So let's get to his second quote, which he just said recently. I think, was it over the weekend? Let me see when this article is. I'm looking on IndieWire. This was from October 13th. So this was Saturday? Yeah, this was an article that was published on Saturday. It says, during a press conference this weekend at the BFI London Film Festival, the Academy Award-winning director said theaters have become amusement parks. That is all fine and good, but don't invade everything else in that sense. That is fine and good for those who enjoy that type of film. And by the way, knowing what goes into them now, I admire what they do. It's not my kind of thing. It simply is not. It's creating another kind of audience that thinks cinema is that. Very interesting, a different perspective, where he's no longer saying those movies are the theme park rides, but that the cinema is becoming the theme park in which these rides are held in, essentially. And he's also saying something I think is a lot more different, a lot more important, where I think he's really concerned with upcoming generations of moviegoers and film people that are going to think that these movies are the best ever. You know what I mean? Like they are the peak of cinema in quotes. You know what I mean? Like this is what movies are made for.
Like a lot of older generations, they're afraid of being forgotten.
Right. And to an extent that, but he's also still striving to being like, you know what? These movies are, I understand why they are so popular. I understand why they are fun for audiences, but there are other movies out there that express cinema in a completely different way that is just as good, or if not better. You know what I mean? And that's something I think you've said a lot, Stephen, when you've become a little disinterested with.
Oh, I have. I mean, I've gotten to a point where my investment in these type of movies has waned. I mean, I don't get enough out of them anymore to get excited for them anymore. I typically do end up watching them because I'm invested in them in a sense of just being curious of what's happening in some of the stories and some of the characters. But for the most part, I invest a lot of my actual mind in films I feel actually are either teaching me something, showing me something about another culture, or are in helping me learn more about maybe a certain filmmaker that I admire, and I just feel like, especially with my investment in physical media, I look at it like a library, something I can learn from, something I can pass on. And I think, this goes along with how Spielberg's been kind of fighting against Netflix, they're trying to keep alive something they find that's precious. and they feel like they feel like technology and the film industry is moving in such a different direction so fast that they feel like they're being left behind. Because they, as Scorsese's kind of saying, we are reprogramming people's how they watch like what they're watching and what they find to be important when it comes to like why they watch movies. They're just watching movies to lose some time or just being entertained. They're not watching movies for any other reason anymore. Like why aren't we watching movies to learn something about another culture, or learn, like to learn something about the world, like,
or to even kind of learn something about the craft in and of
itself.
That
and learn about
ourselves
about movies through the characters in the story, like it's
the way I've learned about movie making in general has been by watching movies, and by watching movies that are crafted in such a way that it's unlike anything you've seen before or anything that was made at the time that in which it came out. There's so much, I mean, this word may not be popular. There's so much educational value to get out of movies that I don't think gets credit for, because movies are typically only seen, as you say, entertainment or a way to like waste 2 hours.
Well, I mean, like what he said, like in his first quote, where he was saying, these movies are not teaching you about human experiences through, you can't relate to Iron Man. He's a billionaire person that can create a suit that can kill, he is a nuclear warhead by itself. You can't relate to Thor. You can't relate to the Hulk. These are fantasy characters.
True.
I mean,
they try though.
They try, but there's certain human experiences that they have that can be relatable. But ultimately, their reality is so heightened that you can't really relate to them.
Right. I mean, and I'll say, playing a little devil's advocate here, there are some films within that genre that strive to be more than just entertainment.
Sure.
More than just, a heightened fantasy entertainment reality or whatever, like you're saying. And what's fascinating to me is those are the movies that people kind of crap on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are the movies that people take the task for not being the other type of movie, the entertaining type of movie, because that's so readily available and it's so consistently available. People think that the superhero comic book genre can only be those types of entertaining, bright, colorful, funny, uplifting movies, that when someone tries to do something else within that genre, sometimes people don't like it. And don't like it because it doesn't resemble what they already know and love. That's why something like The Joker, I think, is so groundbreakingly interesting, because it does something within the genre that nothing really quite has, even though other films like Nolan and Logan and even Watchmen and even Zack Snyder's Man of Steel and Batman v Superman tried to be more than just entertainment, tried to be more than what people typically view it as. It didn't get, anywhere near the positive reaction. It got crapped on quite a bit. But I think there needs to be a broadening of the mind of what these movies can be. Because you can take elements from the quote unquote cinema movies that Scorsese's talking about and infuse them within the comic book superhero genre, but that's a big risk, because because right now they're playing with hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars in money making grosses and box office stuff, so they don't really want to take those risks because they don't want to screw up what's making so much money.
Well, that's the thing is with how successful Marvel's been, though they definitely take chances with certain like weird characters and things like that.
Right.
They ultimately play it pretty safe in the sense of
they are pretty safe.
They're pretty safe in the sense of the type of themes and basically the aesthetic of the movies all look the same.
Oh, they're all starting to look exactly the same, which is kind of annoying. Not even annoying. Yeah. It's really getting to me recently, and not that their aesthetics are bad, they just don't. They just all look the same. They're not interesting.
Well, funny enough, somebody else said something about these movies. Jennifer Aniston.
Oh, Jennifer Aniston did.
What she literally said, what we're kind of hinting to, is that they're all green screen movies. Like,
she did say that. she's not entirely wrong when it comes to the production of these movies. They're basically all made on green screen for the most part. I mean, obviously there are sets and things like that, but there's a lot of green screen in them. And because, that's a cost thing. Also, I mean, some of these movies are dealing with, like we said, like fantasy elements,
that can't
CGI
be
elements
shot
that you just
necessarily.
can't do.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's
if you're gonna, if you're gonna make one of these movies set in space, it's got to be on a green screen.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Of course. But yeah, I mean, I just, I'm with Scorsese, but I'm not against the superhero genre necessarily. I think I'm with. I guess I could say I'm with him more on his side than anything, in the sense of that I'm kind of weary of the direction of film right now. Like it's like I said, I think eventually Hollywood's going to implode on itself. But
Yeah, you said that once or twice before on this podcast. I'm always with Scorsese. I'm always with him.
I'm always with my guy. I know.
I'm with him to the end.
Scorsese. Yeah.
Me and him, we're best friends.
Yeah.
I'm with him forever. But just because I know, like I said, his background's completely different than what our background is in movies and movie history and whatnot. And people out there who are saying things like Martin Scorsese doesn't know cinema. I'm like, come on, you people are crazy. It's like, you guys gotta understand who he is as a person, and to say he doesn't understand cinema is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
he's built a lot of the building blocks of cinema over the last 40, 50 years or so. So those are kind of the two big topics that we talked about. They kind of mesh into one another. Another one I wanted to bring up, and it kind of goes, this will be the last thing we say before we wrap this up, is another filmmaker who is struggling right now to get any type of not like viewership. I would say, his film pretty much just bombed at the box office, and someone who I put even in the same category as a Martin Scorsese in terms of just his importance to cinema, as well as kind of somebody who is a high quality filmmaker, and that is Ang Lee.
Yeah.
Ang Lee's film Gemini Man, which just exhibited in the cinema, in quotes, he's trying to push cinema in another direction, and he can't do it. He is trying to make 3D still a thing, and 3D cannot become a thing because it's kind of dead now again. Like, it comes and goes in waves. Every couple of decades it comes and goes. And his new film Gemini Man was shot in 3D, high frame rate of not 48 frames per second, not 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second. Is it 120? That's what I heard. But the thing is with that, if that sounds bonkers to you, Steven, it's bonkers because hardly any place in the country is equipped with the equipment to exhibit.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to show it in that high frame rate.
He made a movie that literally no one anywhere could possibly see in the way it's supposed to be seen.
The highest frame rate I've heard that could be projected in most theaters is maybe 48 frames, maybe.
I'm seeing some places are showing it in 60.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. Some places have high frame rate. I remember we talked about The Hobbit had a high frame rate.
Yeah.
48 frames per second. We all thought that was bananas a few years ago. Now he's going 120. But the thing is, when it comes to the Ang Lee and how it's connecting to the Scorsese story, is Ang Lee typically makes quote unquote cinema, and his stuff can't get an audience now, and he's trying to do bigger and more interesting things within certain genres and within things like that, and he can't get a foothold now. So you're seeing we're in an interesting time in cinema where something is all the craze and it's seemingly taking over, becoming the standard, like Scorsese is kind of fearing of.
Yeah.
And when someone like Ang Lee is coming along trying to change that, or trying to do something more interesting with the aesthetic of a movie, or with just the theatrical experience, and it's just not working for him, we're kind of like, where do we go when it comes now to exhibition? We've talked about exhibition several times before. That's all part of the cinematic experience. That's all part of the theme park ride. And what is interesting is that Ang Lee's trying to make it even more of a theme park ride with the 3D and all this kind of gimmicky type stuff, and people just don't want to see it.
Well, the thing is
people can't see it for lack of a better term.
Well, the thing is I think when it comes to movies, it's going to always come back to character and story.
Right.
If you're not going to hook people in with your character and story, nobody's going to see it anyway. But
for the most part, you're right.
For the most part, but I mean,
for the most part, you're right. There are certain movies that become big hits that aren't exactly deep character stories.
Sure, of course.
Any of the
there are definitely
movies.
exceptions and things that blow my mind that made a lot of money that shouldn't have.
I mean, I enjoy the Fast and Furious movies.
Can't understand why they make this $1 billion.
There's no real character stuff, and they try. Like that last movie.
Well, them movies hit a particular audience, and they go and see it. They return to see them, just like Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry's got a particular audience that continues to see his movies.
He actually just opened his own movie studio.
Yeah, in Georgia.
Yes, he did, and he's one of. I mean, he's not the first African American man to open up a studio, but he's certainly one of the only few now.
To open up a big studio in this time period where streaming services and things are, I mean, I'm sure he's going to have some kind of streaming thing eventually.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm actually surprised he hasn't. I would have to do research on this, where he doesn't have a contract with someone to produce movies, like kind of like similarly to how you see all like J.J. Abrams just
signed that big
Warner
deal.
Brothers.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers. Russo signing with somebody, or the other people signing with somebody.
I don't think he's locked to anybody.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's not locked with anyone like that, any streaming service, because we are in the middle of the streaming wars, and there are new developments every day.
There is like AMC's doing a streaming service.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to last.
That's crazy. But I think we need to stop before we go any further.
Before we go on a streaming war.
Yeah, we want to go back down that. We had an episode way back near the beginning of our show about streaming.
We're going to have one soon. I think once Disney drops and then HBO Max drops next year,
we're going to have to update it.
We got to have an updated like streaming wars episode.
Yeah, like where are we at in the war?
It's like where we are in the war. Like every other day, somebody's signing some exclusive deal with some streaming service to show something.
Yeah.
Like right now, TV shows are all the thing where everybody's just scooping them up. Like The Office is going here, Friends are going there, Seinfeld's going there, Big Bang Theory's going there. It's like everybody's paying an exorbitant amount of money for not even movies. Television,
and we're getting to the point where I'm starting to think cable's about to just be like sucked into a black hole. It's gonna be sucked. Yeah, it's gonna be gone.
I mean, by the time you sign up, we said this before. By the time you sign up for all these streaming services, you're back to paying cable prices. Yeah. So like cable's gonna go away, but you're still gonna be paying the money you were paying for cable.
It's funny,
but that's a different topic for a different time.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this episode of the Cinema Discovery Project. Thank you for listening. Hey, Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me on Instagram. I post all the goodies. I think Andrew does too on his Instagram. He posts a lot of the stuff that he buys, and just comment and let us know if you've seen the movies we bought. I'm always buying something. That's all I spend my money on. And you can also find the audio for this podcast on Podbean or on Apple Podcasts. And that will be it for this episode. We will probably see you in a couple more weeks with our horror-themed episode. It'll be right before Halloween.
Oh, yes, it will.
So we'll come up with some. I'm not sure exactly. I don't think we're going to do a spotlight necessarily, but I think we're going to maybe just talk horror in general, maybe. But I don't know.
Maybe we'll look at a franchise.
Maybe we'll look at a franchise. Yeah, that might be fun. Maybe spotlight a franchise instead. But that'll be it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.